justice, Spirit of loving kindness. Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Trust in God, all you people. Trust in God at all times. Pour out your heart to God. Trust in God's love. Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to My soul waits in silence for God alone. My soul in silence, my soul for God alone. Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to Holy Spirit, come to my aid. Holy John. The very first few words from John's Gospel.
Chapter 1, verse 1.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
That's the one.
In the beginning, there was the Word. The Word was in God's presence, and the Word was God. The Word was present to God from the beginning. Through the Word, all things came into being, and apart from the Word, nothing came into being that has come into being. And the Word was life, and that life was humanity's light, a light that shines in the darkness, a light that the darkness has never overtaken.
I think that's as far as we got.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Could you read a little bit further?
Okay. Then came one named John, sent as an envoy from God, who came as a witness to testify about the light, so that through his testimony everyone might believe. He himself wasn't the light. He only came to testify about the light, the true light that illumines all humankind.
No more.
The Word was
This keeps
coming.
getting better and better. Yeah.
The Word was coming into the world, was in the world, and through the world, was made through the Word. The world didn't recognize it. Though the Word came to its own realm, the Word's own people didn't accept it. Yet any who did accept the Word, who believed in that name, were empowered to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor urge of flesh, nor human will, but born of God. And the Word became flesh, and stayed for a little while among us. We saw the Word's glory, the favor and position a parent gives an only child, filled with grace, filled with truth.
That's a good place to stop. So let's hear it again. Would you mind reading it, Matt? Same thing. So this is our practice of reading more than once.
In the beginning, there was the Word. The Word was in God's presence, and the Word was God. The Word was present to God from the beginning. Through the Word, all things come into being, and apart from the Word, nothing came into being, and has come into being. In the Word was life, and that life was humanity's light, a light that shines in the darkness, a light that the darkness has never overtaken. Then came one named John, sent as an envoy from God, who came as a witness to testify about the light, so that through his testimony everyone might believe. He himself wasn't the light, he only came to testify about the light, the true light that illuminates all humankind. The Word was coming into the world, was in the world, and through the world, was made through the Word. The world didn't recognize it. Though the Word came to its own realm, the Word's own people didn't accept it. Yet any who did accept the Word, who believed in that name, were empowered to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor urge of flesh, nor human will, but born of God. And the Word became flesh, and stayed for a little while among us. We saw the Word's glory, the favor and position a parent gives an only child, filled with grace, filled with truth.
Thank you. It's one of the most beautiful passages in all of literature, really, but certainly in the sacred gospel texts. It's very poetic, and if we could read it in the original Greek, we would see the kind of poetry that's used in it. One of the things that you can't get in English is some of the idioms that are used. For example, in the text itself, when it says how does it say, he dwelt among us for a little while? toward near the end of what he read.
And the Word became flesh and stayed for a little while among us.
That's it. In the Greek, the idiom that's used, the colloquial Greek, because it's written in what they call Koine Greek, which is common language Greek. It says something like, he pitched his tent for a while among us, which is kind of cool, the imagery, you know, tent dweller, and it somehow conjures up the image that John wanted. It's a brief stay with his tent, and so who's John talking about? Yeah, why does he not use the word Jesus? As far as I know, he hasn't used the word Jesus so far. Right? Why does he do that? Any thoughts?
He wants to emphasize the divine aspect rather than the human.
Yeah. Jesus was the name that was given as a human being, but he's going for the other dimension of this one. And he begins by calling him the Word. It's like, whoa, okay, you got my attention. Really emphasizing the divine nature of this one, this Word, this one we call Jesus. And there's a kind of effect that he's after, I think, if follow me on this. When somebody writes like that, in a poetic kind of way, in a kind of mysterious way, you know, like if I were to describe Michael and say, once there was one who dwelt among us at Sophia House. Cabins were built, floors were laid, and this one dwelt among us. I mean, you kind of like, what's he talking about? This is, you know? So he's got your attention. It's kind of mysterious from the beginning. And the effect, I believe, is one of wonder. You know, so, and it fits with what his message is, right? So the effect, the impact upon his readers is like, this one is really special, unique, and one who causes wonder to appear in us. And I think that's the effect he's going for. And it's a lovely one. Eventually, you know, he gets around to naming him. But what's the role of John the Baptist that is given? What does it say John the Baptist's role is?
A witness to testify.
Right. Does it clarify it? Does it say he was not the light?
Yes, he himself wasn't the light. He only came to testify about
Right.
the light.
So right away, he distinguishes Jesus from every other human being. Okay? John was a pretty cool human being, and some people thought he was the Messiah. Right? He was the light. But this John, the gospel writer, is wanting to clarify right away, this is a unique completely. Right? This Jesus is really saying is God. So, oh my God, you know, how can you possibly believe that, right? But that's what he's calling that. And he's kind of like doing it through the mystery and beauty of language. Right? Yeah. So this is how John begins his gospel. And keep in mind that everything he says, it's not theory with him. It's not like he listened to some great teacher and is repeating the words of some great teacher. It's not like, you know, he took a seminar and studied this book and now he's going to tell us what the book says. He's talking about his personal encounter with the one called Jesus, the Word God. It's like, oh, okay. So it's kind of like a hushed atmosphere he's creating, because he's speaking from the depth of his own encounter with Jesus. So it has this lovely warmth about it, you know, the quality of this. Very different than the other three Gospels in the canon, Mark, Matthew, Luke, they all have their important role to play in telling the story. But John, remember, John is the one who leaned on Jesus' chest during the Last Supper. Right? John is the one who's called the beloved disciple. Of course, he's called that by John, so that's interesting too. But clearly, John had this special relationship with Jesus and this depth of affection, and he's writing out of that, and it comes through, more and more in his gospel. It comes through. He was crazy in love with Jesus, and that's what pours out on the pages of his gospel. So, any other thoughts, questions?
No, I'm just thinking about the part about John the Baptist being the one who is not the Word, and how he had jumped in, his mother was Elizabeth, had jumped in her womb when Mary was just a little bit pregnant. So that John's relationship with Jesus is really had to be very intimate.
Mm-hmm.
Went on before they were born.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? So we'll read a little bit more tomorrow night and see how far we get in John's Gospel. This is a portrait that John is painting. It's like he's an artist. He's a poet, he's a painter, and he's painting this portrait of Jesus, full of mystery and beauty and love and power. Imagine painting a portrait of God. That's what he's doing. And the real impact of this portrait is in the verse where he says, this Word that was God, that was with God, that created everything that is and ever will be, this Word dwelt among us, or pitched his tent among us, became flesh. That's the incarnation. That's the scandal of Christianity. Okay? That's the thing that many, many, many people cannot get their heads around, because there's God and there's human beings. But what John is saying is that the Word, this beautiful, mysterious God, became a human being. And that's the heart of Christian faith, right there. Makes no sense scientifically, okay? But that's the heart of the Christian faith, right there, and all the implications of that.
Why do you call that scandalous?
Because it's the thing that the Apostle Paul called the scandal of Christian faith. The Jews and the Greeks, right, at the time of the Apostle Paul, whenever he preached to them, which he did a lot of, by the way, right? Paul had a lot to say. The Jews saw the scandal, many Jews anyway. The scandal was, how can this man be God? That's scandalous. That's blasphemy.
Okay.
And that's exactly in the Gospels what many Jewish folks would say. This is blasphemy. How can you say, I am the law of Moses? How can you say, I am who I am? You're saying you're God. That's scandalous. Kill him. Right?
Right.
Run away, Jesus, run away. And the Greeks had their own scandal as well, because it made no sense. Right? At that time, Greek philosophy was really at its height, and coming out of Plato and Aristotle and all the other philosophers, how could we possibly speak about this one who is God? That's scandalous. That's nonsensical. That's, even though at that time the Greeks did believe in the gods and the sons of gods, right? Like Perseus was a son of God, right? So they had this thing, but the Greeks didn't want to encounter an actual flesh human
Don't
being,
actually show up.
and it shows up in their local supermarket. That's scandalous, right? That's irrational, and they were right. You could say it's irrational or super rational, beyond science, beyond reason, beyond the empirical. But they were very much empiricists back then, in the philosophy. So yeah, it was scandalous. So John goes about it in his own way, very different than Luke, Matthew, or Mark. So we'll read on a little bit more tomorrow night, see where John takes us. But that's what he wants to do. He wants to take us, and kind of like sweep us off our feet with this beautiful, mysterious, scandalous Jesus. Yeah. We'll close with a song. Close of this day, we give you thanks for your great love for all the world and everyone in it, and for Jesus the Christ, the Word, the most beautiful, mysterious, divine Jesus. Help us to see, to hear, and to follow. May it be so.